Admiral Park stood at the command center of the HCSS Intrepid, his gray uniform crisp despite the long hours of the mission. He watched the holographic display with careful eyes as the small diplomatic shuttle moved toward the huge alien ship. His face showed nothing, but his dark eyes held worry. "Still no answer from the Kelverans, sir," said Lieutenant Kim. Her hands moved quickly over the glowing control panel. She brushed a strand of black hair from her face, her expression serious. "Continue broadcasting on all frequencies. Use all translation matrices," Park ordered. His voice was calm but firm. "They must understand we seek peaceful contact." The shuttle was tiny against the massive Kelveran flagship. The alien vessel stretched nearly 5 kilometers from end to end, its surface covered with strange symbols and what looked like weapon ports. This was humanity's first contact with the Kelveran Empire, and everything had to go perfectly. Captain Sue approached Admiral Park. "The diplomatic team reports they're in position. Ambassador Kang is ready to begin first contact procedures." Park nodded. "Tell them to proceed with caution. We still know very little about Kelveran customs." Inside the shuttle, Ambassador Kang and his team prepared their greeting. They had studied the limited information available about the Kelverans for months. The aliens had been observed at the edges of human space for years, but this was the first direct meeting. On the bridge of the Kelveran flagship, Empress Todd watched the approaching human vessel with growing anger. Her scaled skin shimmered with blue and purple highlights as her emotions flared. The throne room was vast, with curved walls covered in living metal that seemed to pulse with the ship's heartbeat. These humans approach without the submission lights active. "They have not lowered their shields as tradition demands," she said, her voice like ice. "They show great disrespect." General Moon stood at attention beside the throne. Unlike the Empress, his scales were a deep red, marking him as a military caste. "Your Majesty, our scouts have observed their territory. They appear to be newcomers to this sector. Perhaps they do not know our ways." "Ignorance is no excuse," Ted replied, tapping her long claws against the arm of her throne. "All species must learn their place in the hierarchy." A junior officer approached and bowed low. "Your Radiance, our intelligence division has completed its analysis of human military capabilities." "Speak," ordered the Empress. "The humans have constructed approximately 200 vessels they call Supercarriers. Each is capable of housing smaller craft and sustaining long-duration missions." This caught the Empress's attention. 200 capital ships, a meaningful number for such a young race. For a moment, she seemed thoughtful. General Moon cleared his throat carefully. Perhaps caution would be. Empress Ta cut him off with a gesture. "Show me these supercarriers." The officer activated a display, showing human vessels. They were large but nothing compared to Kelveran dreadnoughts. The design seemed practical rather than beautiful, clearly built for function over form. "Primitive vessels from a primitive species," Ta scoffed, her initial concern vanishing. "Their construction is basic. They lack the beauty and power of true Kelveran warships." "Even so, Your Radiance, their number suggests," Moon began. "It suggests nothing," Tai interrupted. "Many lesser species build large fleets out of fear, but quantity cannot match quality." She rose from her throne, her full height impressive as her ceremonial robes shifted around her. "They approach without proper submission. They must learn the cost of such disrespect." Moon hesitated. In his many cycles of service, he had seen the Empress's pride lead to unnecessary conflict. "Your Radiance, perhaps we should study them further before." "Are you questioning my judgment, General?" Ta's eyes narrowed dangerously. Moon bowed low. "Never, Your Radiance. I only suggest caution with an unknown species." "The Kelveran Empire has ruled this sector for 10,000 cycles," Ta said. "We did not achieve this by showing weakness to newcomers." She turned to the weapons officer. "Target their shuttle. Show them what happens to those who fail to show proper respect to the Empire." "At once, Your Radiance," the officer responded, inputting commands. Back on the Intrepid, Admiral Park watched as Ambassador Kang's team prepared to dock with the designated area on the Kelverin ship. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim said suddenly, her voice tight with alarm. "Energy readings from the Kelverin vessel. They're activating weapon systems." Park's eyes widened. "Open a channel. All frequencies. Tell them to stand down." "They're not responding," Kim reported frantically. "Warn the shuttle. Tell them to pull back immediately," Park ordered. But it was too late. A beam of energy lanced out from the Kelverin flagship, striking the diplomatic shuttle. The small craft exploded in a brief, silent flash of light. The command center of the Intrepid fell silent. 50 of Earth's finest diplomats, scientists, and first contact specialists, gone in an instant. Admiral Park's expression hardened as he watched the remains of the shuttle drift in space. His weathered face showed nothing, but inside, his mind raced through the implications. This was an act of war, unprovoked and brutal. "Sir," Captain Sue said quietly. "Orders." Park took a deep breath. "Send word to Earth Command. The diplomatic mission has failed." He paused, looking at the massive alien ship on the display, and began recalling our fleet. All 200 supercarriers. He hadn't wanted this war. No one had. But if the Kelverin Empire wanted conflict, humanity would defend itself. And the Kelverins would soon learn they had gravely underestimated the species they had just provoked. Flames reached toward the sky as Colony New Seoul burned. Red and orange fire reflected in the windows of tall buildings. Black smoke filled the air. People ran through streets trying to escape the attack. Kelverin warships flew low over the city, firing energy weapons that cut through concrete and steel like paper. Governor Lee ran down the hallway of the emergency bunker deep below the city center. Sweat covered his face, and his normally neat hair was messy. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls. Around him, staff worked at computer stations, their faces lit by screens showing the destruction above. "Where are the civilian transports? How many people have we evacuated?" Lee shouted over the noise of alarms. 30% of the population is in the shelters," answered Deputy Min, her voice steady despite her fear. "Transports are loading at emergency points, but the Kelverins are targeting them. We've lost 7 ships already." Lee slammed his fist on the metal table. "Where is the fleet? Earth Command promised protection. They said we would have warning if the Kelverins attacked." As if answering his question, every screen in the command center suddenly showed the same thing, the sky above New Seoul changing. Space itself seemed to tear open as massive jump points formed in the upper atmosphere. Blue energy crackled around the edges of these giant portals. "They're here," whispered Min. Through the jump points came humanity's supercarriers. First one, then 3, then dozens. The huge ships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming in the colony's sunlight. Each vessel stretched nearly 20 kilometers from end to end. They dwarfed the Kelverin attackers, which now looked like small insects next to whales. On the main screen, Lee could see the HCS Resilient leading the formation. It was humanity's flagship, easily recognized by its distinctive forward section, shaped like a spearhead. "Get me a channel to the Resilient," ordered Lee. On the bridge of the Resilient, Captain Song stood before the main viewport. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, not a wrinkle in sight despite the chaos of battle stations around her. Officers called out reports as the massive ship settled into position. Through the viewport, Song could see the colony burning and the Kelverin ships continuing their attack. "Captain, we have Governor Lee requesting communication," said Communications Officer Ba. "Put him through, but keep it brief," Song replied. Her attention was on the tactical display, showing all 27 Kelverin warships in their positions. Governor Lee's face appeared on a side screen. "Captain Song, thank the stars you're here. We're losing civilian transports by the minute." "Understood, Governor. We'll handle it from here. Continue evacuations to the shelters. We'll clear the skies." Song's voice was calm but firm. She turned to her tactical officer. "All carriers, Execute defensive formation Delta. Priority is protecting civilian transports and population centers. Throughout the fleet, the order was echoed by other captains. The massive human ships moved with surprising grace, arranging themselves in a protective dome over the colony. Smaller craft poured from their launch bays, fighters and interceptors racing toward the Kelvarin attackers. The Kelvarin ships, seeing the human fleet arrive, broke off their attack on the colony. Their sleek, predatory vessels turned toward what they expected would be easy prey. Their commanders had been told that human technology was primitive, that their shields would fail under Kelvarin weapons. The lead Kelvarin cruiser fired its main weapon at the Resilient. A beam of green energy shot across space, hitting the Supercarrier shields. Instead of cutting through as expected, the beam splashed against an invisible barrier, spreading out like water hitting glass. Captain Song didn't even flinch as the bridge lit up with the reflected glow of the weapon impact. "Shields holding at 97%, reported the defense officer. Song nodded. "Return fire. Targeted disabling shots only. We want to minimize casualties." The Resilience weapon systems activated. Instead of wild destruction, the human weapons fired with precision, targeting engines and weapon systems on the Kelvarin ships. 3 more Kelvarin cruisers joined the attack, all firing on the Resilient. Again, the shields held. "Multiple hits, shields at 91%, called out the defense officer. "Continue defensive fire. Launch rescue teams to the civilian transports," Song ordered. She watched as the Kelvarin ships started to realize their weapons weren't having the expected effect. Aboard the Kelvarin command ship, Empress sat rigid on her throne. Her scaled skin had turned pale as she watched the battle footage. What should have been an easy victory was turning into disaster. "Impossible," she hissed, claws digging into the arms of her throne. "How can they withstand our most powerful weapons? Those shields should have collapsed instantly." General Moon stood before her, his head bowed low. The battle display between them showed Kelvarin ships being disabled one after another, while the human carriers remained virtually untouched. "Your Majesty," Moon said carefully, "it appears we may have underestimated them." "Explain," Ta demanded. Moon gestured to the display. "Our intelligence suggested their technology was primitive. It seems this was incorrect. Their shields use a modulation pattern we've never encountered. And these ships, they're not just large, they're extraordinarily well designed." Ta rose from her throne, her full height impressive even as her confidence faltered. "Order the fleet to regroup. We need to reassess." As Kelvarin ships began to retreat, Captain Song watched from the Resilience bridge. The attack on New Seoul had been stopped, but she knew this was just the beginning. "Captain," said her first officer, "the enemy is withdrawing. Should we pursue?" Song shook her head. "No. Our priority is protecting the colony and helping survivors. Besides," she added, looking at the tactical display showing the retreating Kelvarins, "I think we've made our point for today." Below, on the surface of New Seoul, people came out of shelters to see the massive human ships hovering protectively above their city. The battle was over, at least for now. But the war had just begun. Dr. Han's footsteps echoed in the large research laboratory aboard the HCS Dauntless. 3 months of war had turned the research deck into a busy workshop filled with salvaged Kelvarin technology. Scientists in blue uniforms worked at various stations, studying alien devices spread across tables. Han picked up a damaged power core from a Kelvarin cruiser, turning it over in his hands. The device glowed with a faint purple light. His face showed the tiredness of someone who hadn't slept properly in days, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Admiral Park entered the lab, still wearing his combat uniform. His presence caused several researchers to stand straighter at their stations. Park had become something of a legend since the start of the war, commanding successful defensive operations across 3 star systems. "Dr. Han, I need your report," Park said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. Han gestured for the Admiral to follow him to a workstation with large screens showing diagrams of Kelveran technology. "I've completed my analysis of their power systems," Han explained, pointing to the core in his hand. "Their technology is impressive at first glance. Their power generation produces about 30% more energy than our best systems. That doesn't match with our combat experiences," Park noted. "We've consistently outperformed them in energy output during engagements." Han smiled, placing the core on a scanner. "Exactly. Because they're extremely inefficient. Look at this." The screen showed the internal structure of the device. "They waste nearly 45% of their energy through heat loss and poor redistribution systems." "And why haven't they improved this?" Park asked. "In my opinion, they've never needed to," Han replied, pushing his glasses up his nose. "The Kelveran Empire has ruled their section of space for thousands of years without serious challenge. Why optimize when you're already on top? It's made them complacent." Park nodded slowly, understanding the implications. "And their political structure. The intelligence reports are incomplete." Han walked to another screen showing various Kelveran ship designs and what appeared to be different alien species. "They're hierarchical to a fault. The Empress rules absolutely, with several subjugated species serving under them." Han pointed to images of aliens with different physical features. "These are Raitorans, Belker, and Xani, all conquered species within the Empire, and not all serve willingly." "Potential allies?" Park asked. "Possibly. We've intercepted communications suggesting unrest on several worlds. The war is stretching Kelveran resources thin, and they're demanding more from these subject worlds." Park studied the screen thoughtfully. "Good work, Doctor. This information could change our approach to the conflict." "There's one more thing, Admiral," Han said, lowering his voice slightly. "We've decoded part of their historical archives. The Kelverans have a legend about a species that would someday challenge their rule. They call them the Fleet Bearers, a race that carries their cities among the stars." Park's eyebrows rose slightly. "Like our Supercarriers." "Exactly like our Supercarriers," Han confirmed. "I think that's why the Empress attacked so quickly. She believes we're this prophesied threat to her rule." Across the galaxy, in the Imperial Palace on the Kelveran homeworld, Empress Ta sat on her jeweled throne. The War Council chamber was massive, with high ceilings and walls covered in battle maps. The room was filled with military officers, all standing at careful attention, their scaled skin reflecting the harsh lighting. The atmosphere was tense with the weight of failure. 3 months of war had not gone as expected. Kelveran forces had lost 17 major engagements and gained no significant territories. General Moon stood before the Empress, delivering his report. His normally proud posture was slightly bent, as if carrying a heavy burden. "These humans adapt too quickly," Moon explained, gesturing to battle footage showing human ships executing complex maneuvers. "Every tactic we deploy, they counter within days. They learn from each encounter and adjust their strategies accordingly. Last week, we used the spiral formation to attack their outpost in the Proxima system," another general added. "It worked initially, but in the follow-up battle 2 days later, they had completely reconfigured their defense grid to neutralize it." Empress Ta's claws clicked against her throne's armrest, a sign of her growing anger. "So they learn quickly. All species can learn, but none can match the raw power of the Kelveran Empire when fully mobilized." She stood up suddenly, her full height imposing as her ceremonial robes shifted around her. "Then we will crush them with overwhelming force. No more measured responses, no more testing their defenses." Her voice filled the chamber, strong and determined. "Commit the Imperial Reserve Fleet, all of it." A murmur ran through the assembled officers. The Reserve Fleet hadn't been fully deployed in over 3 centuries. "Target their colonies, their supply lines, their homeworld," Ta continued, her eyes glowing with intensity. "I want these humans on their knees. I want their supercarriers broken and burning. The prophecy will not come to pass during my reign." The generals bowed in acknowledgement. though some exchanged worried glances. The reserve fleet represented a massive commitment of resources and personnel. A junior officer named Jin stood at the back of the chamber. He wore the uniform of the diplomatic corps rather than the military. After a moment of hesitation, he stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Your Radiance," Jin began, his voice steady despite his obvious nervousness. "Perhaps we should consider negotiation with the humans. Several member worlds are questioning the cost of this war. The Ritorans have reduced their tribute shipments by 30%, and the Belquer delegation has requested an audience to discuss their concerns." The chamber went completely silent. Officers stepped away from Jin, creating an empty space around him. To question the Empress's strategy in open council was almost unheard of. Tay's eyes narrowed dangerously, her scales shifting to a deep red color that signaled extreme anger. "Are you suggesting treason, Commander Jin? Do you believe the Eternal Empire should bow to primitives who have barely learned to leave their planet?" Jin swallowed hard but stood his ground. "Not treason, Your Radiance. Pragmatism. The humans have shown willingness to communicate. They broadcast peace offerings even as they defend themselves, and our latest intelligence suggests they've made contact with the Ritorans." This last statement sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber. If the humans formed alliances with subjugated worlds, the war could take on a dangerous new dimension. Empress Ta stepped down from her throne platform, walking slowly toward Jin. Her movements were deliberate, predatory. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter but somehow more threatening. "The Empire does not negotiate when challenged. The Empire responds with overwhelming force." She stopped directly in front of Jin. "You are relieved of your duties, Commander. Report to reconditioning." Two guards immediately moved to escort Jin from the chamber. As he was led away, Jin called out, "The prophecy speaks not just of the fleet bearers, but of change. Perhaps change need not mean destruction." After Jin was removed, Tay addressed the remaining officers. "Prepare the reserve fleet. We attack Earth directly. This war ends with human surrender or human extinction." As the council dispersed to carry out her orders, General Moon remained behind, his expression troubled. The Empress noticed his hesitation. "You have concerns, General." Moon chose his words carefully. "Only tactical considerations. Your Radiance. The humans have surprised us at every turn. We should prepare for unexpected resistance." Ta looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's massive viewport. "They are clever, yes, but they are young. And the young must learn their place in the galaxy." Red warning lights flashed across Earth's orbital defense platforms. Alarms sounded throughout the giant space stations that protected humanity's homeworld. On every screen, the same terrifying sight appeared: thousands of Kelveran warships emerging from hyperspace. The Imperial Armada had arrived. "Mother of Stars," whispered a young defense officer, her face pale as she watched the enemy fleet materialize. "There must be over 5,000 ships." At the center of the Kelveran formation was a vessel that dwarfed all others, the Imperial Dreadnought. It stretched 30 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull decorated with the royal symbols of the Kelveran Empire. Unlike other Kelveran ships with their sleek, predatory designs, the Dreadnought was built to inspire fear through sheer size and power. Inside Earth's main defense command center, Admiral Park watched grimly as the enemy fleet arranged itself for attack. Around him, officers worked frantically at their stations, coordinating Earth's defenses and the evacuation of civilian centers. "Sir, Fleet Commander Song reports all 200 supercarriers are in position," his aide reported. Park nodded. "Put her through to all channels." The main screen switched to show Captain Song, now Fleet Commander Song, standing on the bridge of the HCS Resilient. Her uniform now bore the markings of her new rank, but her calm expression remained the same as the day she had defended New Seoul. "Attention all vessels." Song's voice rang out across every human ship in the system. "This is the moment we've prepared for. The enemy believes this will be our final stand. They are wrong." She paused, looking directly into the camera. All 200 carriers will execute Formation Omega on my mark. Remember your training and trust your crews. We faced them before and prevailed. Today, we defend Earth itself. Throughout the fleet, crew members listened to her words. Some were veterans of earlier battles. Others were facing the Kelverans for the first time. All took strength from Song's confidence. Formation Omega. Execute now, Song commanded. The human supercarriers, which had been holding position in standard defensive groups, began to move. Each massive vessel adjusted its position with surprising grace for such large ships. Slowly, deliberately, they arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional lattice. On the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought, Empress Todd watched the human fleet's movements with narrowed eyes. She wore full battle armor, its plates shimmering with the royal colors. Around her, officers managed the operations of the massive flagship. "What are they doing?" she demanded, pointing to the display showing the human fleet's new formation. General Moon studied the tactical display, his expression troubled. "The humans form a wall between us and their homeworld," he observed. "Their formation creates overlapping fields of fire while protecting each other's vulnerabilities. It's elegant." "It changes nothing," Tai declared. "We outnumber them more than 20 to 1. Break through their formation." "As you command, Your Radiance," Moon replied, giving the order to attack. Thousands of Kelveran warships surged forward, weapons charging. The space between the fleets lit up with energy beams, missile trails, and explosions as the battle began. Inside the human formation, Fleet Commander Song directed the defense. The lattice formation allowed the supercarriers to concentrate their fire on specific targets while maintaining their protective screen. When one carrier's shields weakened, it would rotate to a protected position while another took its place. "Kelveran Cruiser Group breaking through in Sector 7, reported Tactical Officer Ba. "Carriers Indomitable and Horizon. Shift to intercept," Song ordered calmly. "Deploy Fighter Screen Delta." The battle raged for hours. Kelveran ships fell by the dozens, then hundreds, their superior numbers countered by the human fleet's superior position and coordination. The Imperial Dreadnought remained at the rear of the Kelveran formation, directing the attack but staying out of the heaviest fighting. On the Dreadnought's bridge, Empress Tay's initial confidence had faded to concern, then to growing anger as reports of losses continued to arrive. Their shields should have failed by now, she shouted as another attack wave broke against the human formation. How are they maintaining power levels for this long? General Moon was about to respond when a communications officer approached, looking deeply troubled. "Your Radiance," the officer said, bowing low. "We're receiving urgent transmissions from the homeworld and core systems." "Not now," Ta snapped. "We are in the middle of battle." "Empress, it's an emergency," the officer insisted, his scales pale with fear. "There are reports of uprisings on dozens of subjugated worlds. The Retorans and Beltorans have declared independence. They're attacking our rear supply bases and command centers." Tai froze, her eyes widening in shock. Impossible. The security forces would have seen signs of rebellion. Another officer approached with a data tablet. "Your Radiance, we're receiving footage from Rytoran Prime." The screen showed Rytoran forces overwhelming Kelveran security troops. Fighting alongside them were human special forces, easily identified by their distinctive armor. "They've been planning this," Moon said quietly. "The humans made contact with our subject worlds. This attack on Earth was exactly what they wanted us to do." All ships pressed the attack. Tai ordered, her voice rising with desperation. "We must break through now." But even as she gave the order, the tactical display showed a new development. The human formation was changing, parts of it spreading outward in a controlled expansion. Before long, the Imperial Dreadnought found itself targeted by multiple supercarriers that had flanked the main Kelveran force. "We're surrounded," Moon reported, his voice flat. 7 human supercarriers have us in weapons range." Ta stared at the display in disbelief. The human vessels could have fired immediately, but instead they held position, their weapons locked on the dreadnought but not firing. "Our shields cannot withstand concentrated fire from that many carriers," a defense officer reported. Empress Ta, ruler of the mighty Kelvaran Empire, stood silent as the reality of her situation became clear. Everything had gone wrong. Her forces were being defeated. Her empire was crumbling from within. And now her flagship, with her aboard, was at the mercy of the very humans she had dismissed as primitives. "They're hailing us," Moon said quietly, breaking the silence on the bridge. Ta looked at the communications panel, where a signal request flashed steadily. The humans could have destroyed her flagship, killing her and her command staff instantly. Instead, they wanted to talk. After a long moment, she gave a small nod. "Put them through." The main screen activated, showing Fleet Commander Song standing tall on the bridge of her vessel. "Empress Ta," Song said, her voice calm and without mockery. "This war can end today. No more ships need to be destroyed. No more lives need to be lost." Ta looked at the human commander, seeing not the primitive she had imagined, but a worthy opponent who had outmaneuvered her completely. "What are your terms?" Tai asked, speaking the words she never thought would pass her lips. The turning point had arrived, and with it, the beginning of a new galactic order. The grand meeting hall of New Seoul gleamed in the morning sunlight. Its glass walls showed the rebuilt city outside, rising from the ashes of war. Inside, delegates from across the galaxy gathered around a large circular table. This was a historic day, exactly 1 year after first contact between humans and Kelvarans. At one side of the table sat the human delegation, led by Admiral Park. His uniform was decorated with medals, though he wore them with humble dignity. On the other side sat former Empress Ta, now simply Representative Ta, and her advisors. Her scales had dulled slightly from their former bright colors, but she still carried herself with pride. As the Treaty of New Seoul was placed before them, Ta looked across at Park. The document represented massive changes for her people. The Kelvaran Empire would become the Kelvaran Republic. All subjugated species would receive independence and equal representation in a new galactic council. "Your supercarriers," she said suddenly, the words coming with difficulty for her pride. "They were never meant primarily for war, were they?" The question silenced the quiet conversations around the table. Park looked at her thoughtfully before answering. "No," he said simply. "They're exploration vessels designed to sustain colonies and research missions across vast distances." He gestured to a hologram showing the internal layout of a human supercarrier. Most of the space is dedicated to habitation, laboratories, manufacturing, and farming. The weapon systems were secondary, added because space is dangerous and unknown. Ta nodded slowly, her expression showing new understanding. "We interpreted your strength as a threat." "A common mistake," Park replied kindly. "But now we can build something better together." He signed the treaty with a pen made from wood from Earth. Ta signed with a ceremonial claw dipped in ink, following the tradition of her people. As they completed the signatures, applause filled the hall. Later, as delegates celebrated with food and drink, Dr. Han approached Ta, carrying a small device. "Representative, I've been studying Kelvaran power systems," he said. "With your permission, I'd like to show you something." Curious, Ta followed him to a side table where he activated the device. It projected a design combining human efficiency with Kelvaran power generation. "Together, our technologies could achieve things neither of us could alone," Han explained with excitement. For the first time since her defeat, Ta felt genuine interest stirring within her. How soon could we build a prototype? 5 years passed quickly. The galaxy changed more in that time than in the previous 1,000 years. The Galactic Council brought together 27 species, including those formerly under Kelvaran rule. New trade routes opened, cultural exchanges flourished, and the greatest project of all was nearly complete. At the massive orbital shipyard near Jupiter, Chief Engineer Choi moved through the final inspection of the enormous vessel docked there. It was 3 times larger than any previous supercarrier, combining the best technologies of multiple species. Check the gravitational stabilizers again, she called to a team of engineers. A mix of humans and Kelverans working side by side. I want them at perfect efficiency before the launch ceremony. The ship was a wonder of engineering. Its hull featured flowing lines influenced by Kelveran design combined with human practicality. Its power systems were a perfect fusion of technologies Dr. Han had first envisioned years ago. But most importantly, it represented something new in the galaxy. True cooperation between formerly hostile species. On the observation deck overlooking the shipyard, Representative Ta stood beside Captain Song, watching their peoples work together. Song now wore the uniform of the Galactic Exploration Fleet, a new organization separate from any single species military. The Galactic Council votes on the new exploration initiative tomorrow, Ta remarked, her gaze fixed on the magnificent ship. Song smiled. With your support, I'm confident it will pass. The universe is vast, and we've barely begun to understand it. Tay turned to look at the human beside her. Once enemies, now colleagues. Perhaps even friends, though that was still a strange concept for a former empress. When we first saw your fleet of supercarriers, we thought only of war, Tay admitted. Our legends spoke of fleet bearers who would challenge our rule. We never imagined they would instead challenge our understanding of cooperation. Song nodded. And we never imagined finding such valuable allies among those who first attacked us. Below them, engineers completed their final checks. The ship's massive engines began to glow with blue energy, powering up for their first full test. Captain Song called a voice over the communication system. All systems are green. We're ready for engine ignition sequence. Proceed, Song replied. The gentle hum of the engines grew louder, resonating through the observation deck. As the great ship moved slowly away from its docking clamps, sunlight caught its hull, illuminating the name painted on its bow in multiple languages. Harmony. A small crowd had gathered on the observation deck, representatives from every council species. They watched in silence as the Harmony executed a perfect turn, its engines glowing brighter. Where will you go first? Tai asked Song. Beyond the outer rim, Song replied. No one has explored those regions. The ship carries scientists from 15 different worlds, including 20 Kelveran specialists. Tai felt an unexpected emotion. Pride, but different from the pride of an empress. This was pride in something created, not conquered. As the Harmony moved toward open space, its powerful engines lighting up like new stars, Representative Ta thought of the ancient Kelveran prophecy that had caused her to fear humans. The prophecy had spoken of fleet bearers bringing change to the galaxy. It had been right after all. Change had come. But instead of destruction, it had brought something far more powerful, unity. The future had never looked brighter. The end.